Recording. And the message. Yeah. Okay. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting. Tuesday, the 10th of December. It's being recorded for publication on the Thatcham Town Council YouTube channel. So turning to the officer, any apologies for absence?
Just want to make Chair, Councillor Van Watts
and Justin Penderson.
Justin Penderson and Councillor Martin.
So, declarations of interest. Then a declaration of interest on beyond, of course, we'll have in the indirect interest in the local plan and legal development plan, but this is a interesting purpose. So, turning to item number, before we do the minutes, we'll turn to item number 3, the Newbury Leisure Park. One was. Mr. Atul Hinducha to give you a presentation of his thoughts about the future of that site. I should turn around here, so I'm not looking backwards at this point. So over to you. Oh, sorry. Can I propose that we invite members of the public to speak in the meeting? I think. Those in favour? Process is complete.
Thank you, Simon. Hinducha and I have been equity investors in the Newbury Park. We owned the specific site which you would all know is involved in touching. Really, it's moving along the A4. There's signage to it. It's not been a leisure park and it's not been involved for over 4 years. So it's fascinating element over the sort of COVID years that sort of killed off that last business that used to operate. And we've been left with the sites. Now, I bumped into Simon at the independent inspectors hearings in October, and we were both making representations which were very Simon was making representations about how much of it should be used and so on as part of the inspector's findings. And here I was saying, here's a brownfield site really for any sort of development, housing or otherwise, instead of green, really. And the inspector had invited me to present because when Bosch really, he strongly put it to me that actually this was a site that Westbox had not identified, not really assessed correctly, and therefore I was allowed to. The purpose tonight really is to bring everybody here to speed with the history and what's been going on so far within these 4 years. And really, from my perspective, the conversation at the end of my slides is really important to how we take this forward, because at the moment it's just attracting crime and vandalism, and it's bringing more antisocial behaviour into the area because there's no interest in using this. So, you just go through a few slides, and that'll give us all through the crime. So I'm just going to cover views of the side, submissions that we've made to West Berkshire within their processes. And for the last 4 years, we've tried to keep up with all the standard processes that West Berks have, working alongside the 3 sort of teams within planning policy, planning itself, and those 2 teams. I will share with you the West Berks responses, which kind of, a little bit strange, to say the least. And really, 2 bits of the session here is about your help, your support to say how can we move this forward really.
Yeah.
So if I can share with you, we want to switch the front light on. We might, are we able? We sit a little bit better. Oh, thank you. This makes a big difference. Thanks. So this is pre-December 20, when the site was used frequently. There's two main buildings on the site. The large building in the facility, it's had 10 buildings, it's had 2 or 3 restaurants, upper parts have got a children's play area. It's had a club in the past, a bar. In normal housing terms, the 4-story building. Reaches 2 stories at the moment, 40,000 square feet. The second property is a smaller property, 3,500 square feet. It's a 13-bedroom. It's a rent of a 13-bedroom residential property at the moment, but in the past, I think it seems to be 3 residential cottages from the 60s or 70s, you know. We're looking to buy the new residential. Business. Those are the 2 properties on there. You know, the rear of the site, the side of the site, even the narrowest little bit of the site is a 2-room road. It's quite a significant size. And at the back, we've got a beautiful lake, a fishing lake at the back, and I think it's the Reading Angling Association. Very lively. So when the business failed due to COVID, we modified the site. Initially, we didn't realize we would get vandalism, but we did get vandalism. Every single window is broken. It's about £1,000. There's nothing in the building. They don't know that we're breaking in. So we boarded everything up. We did to try and protect it, including the residential property. However, over the last 4 years, you can see how much damage there has been. Every side, every window, every door has been broken through at least twice. To patch up and repatch up. We went through a phase where we had 5 break-ins in a week. April last year, they're going through the roof. They don't find anything. Not a single prosecution. Not a single prosecution. Having 4 people on site. So really don't know how to stop that. The road itself is a residential road, so you can see some of the detached houses right opposite the site, you know, about 50 to 60 yards from the site. What used to be offices have now all been converted into flats, either that 2-story block here.
The 3-story block is not a conversion. It's was built as flats.
Okay, it was
purpose
built.
Yeah.
Right. But the plan just shows you the size of the larger building, which is here, and that's what it's all hard standing. It was developed in the 80s. It's a big rental. And in terms of parking, there's probably over 200 cars worth of parking during the city. It's 1.25 acres to give you a sense of size. Moving on to the submissions that we've made within West Berkshire Council's processes, they asked us to submit submissions on Teller. They asked us to make submissions on Brownfield Register, the local draft plan, and all of those. It must have a tag under the it's called PA21. However, any of these, at no point from 2021 have we ever been contacted to say, can we come and assess this? Nobody's come to assess the site. There's been a desktop exercise on it. It also featured with the Economic Development Committee. That team in that committee basically supported the residential only because there was such a demand for. However, they were not influenced by stage. Then the council planning policy wants us to put in for a pre-application. Now, that's not a insignificant. I think if you're doing a house extension, it's quite a simple exercise. But when you're doing it for something like this, you create a scheme, and so on. That's quite a heavy way to. We went through it, and it was just this desktop exercise that kind of said no. But I'll come on to what the issues were. They asked us to do a prelim flood risk report. We did that. Majority of the site is on flood zone 1 and 2, which is fine to develop on flood. The site is in 3. However, the important answer is that the flood zone the environmental agency publishes is over 25 years old. So they know that it would be better than the data. Even if we use the data right now as it stands, there's no reason why 3/4 of the site couldn't be used for residential. So after 3 years, they did reply to us. This year, Westpark said basically the rationale for being against the pre-application that we've got was that property side of the city. Yeah. They do accept that it's that the settlement boundary should have been inclusive of this site over 40 years ago. But they've just never done. They accept that it was developed in the 80s. On the brownfield, they basically just come up with for me. Now, along with the papers with the agenda and so on, I sent a copy of it, which is with that in a second in terms of what the criteria is. If I can show you where the settlement boundary is. So this is Lower Way. Definitely got residential commercial on it. That's the Lower Way farm next door to us. That's also got residential and commercial. That's got a number of small industrial units in there, doing small businesses, SMEs. The really commercial element there has come on much later. Here, it was all purpose about for the early 80s, yeah. So brownfield site submission. The legislation, and I've said that with the attachments, that's the statutory instrument. Basically, it says for a brownfield site, the criteria firstly has the land got at least 0.25 hectares. Our site is 1.7 hectares, right? So it easily meets that. Is it suitable for residential development? Well, it's already got residential on it. So, yes. Is it available? As landowner, I would say yes, it's available. Now, it's been on the market for 4 years, and all the interest is just from developers. As soon as they're going to have a conversation with Westpark's council, it's sort of kibosh, really. Yeah. And is residential development achievable? Well, all the interest we've had in 4 years is from developers. Commercial and residential, but I think if we look at how much the neighborhood would want on a residential road like that, I don't think they would want a 24,000. Most developers would put on four large sheds on there, and that would be a 24/7 situation. So I think we would get a lot of pushback on. So residential it seems to be screaming out residential only because of the rapid spread of residential. The Economic Development Committee, they agreed that the site has no economic value. The previous businesses used to employ less than 6 full-time equivalents. We've had 3 businesses fail from 2012 to 2020. Clearly, so it doesn't need to have a change of use of sorts. And in the last 4 years, there's less than 4 out of Europe. There's only 4 large. So the Development Committee, the Economic Development Committee said that it will be changed. It needs to be changed. They don't know what state advisors to do. And in terms of its current state, you saw pictures. It's derelict. It's a activity. We just don't give it. And our biggest fear is any fatality, being in there and something awful happens. Or fire or settlers. So we've worked with all the emergency services. They've told us how to secure the site. And we're hoping that settlers and so on don't come along. The space that we've got, and it's all outstanding. It's a big fear of us. Yeah. The response to the pre-application really was settlement boundary or flood risk. So we've talked about settlement boundary. However, it's unarguable. It's all outstanding. You can see from the pictures, and the fact that West Berks planning officers have not come to assess it. Not physically actually come to have a look at it. I just think it's devastating, right? And the second reason they used was flood risk. So they said, look, there's a flood risk, and in the flood risk, really, share with you the prelim flood risk report. You can't see the colours on it. But anything in white is flood zone 1. So the fact that the building already exists, it's never had an insurance claim on it, says that that's all safe. The dark blue here is flood zone 3. Typically, you would have really special measures, but we see in the town, you know, the Kennett Centre, that's all on flood zone 3. There are ways of doing it. At the moment, I don't have the will to push for that.
So that is the lake anyway, I guess.
No, this is the here.
Yeah, but most of
This
this
is the car park. Yes,
okay.
exactly. However, this light blue section here, this is flood zone 2, and it's already raised to over 11. So really, that should be flood zone 1. Bottom line is the prelim report says the Environment Agency data is very low. We a lot of defences work done in Canada over the last 25 years. So if we were to model that again in terms of heavy rainfall and so on, it would not be the same map. So literally, there would be degrees down here. Doesn't account for that. And my view is actually I don't really want to be part of the Environment Agency to disprove for such a small piece of land. If we look at how much is included in the local development plan now, and Greenfield is going to get to I think to help support whatever case we want to put there. But for that small site, even if you don't use flood zone 3, at 3/4 of that site, there is capacity for 100 homes, and it's just frustrating that that's the position we're in. At the hearings with the inspector, the second person that looked me up and made contact was a lawyer. So his view was, you were talking sense at this hearing. Why is your site still sitting there, not been developed for residential when there's such a shortfall, such a demand? It should be way before anything to be. And he basically said, look, in the case, the national framework says allocate brownfield and greenfield before greenfield. And here we have a brownfield site pre-developed. Why isn't it included? Central government is also saying all pre-developed land should be first thought about for repurposing for residential. Again, no real supporting comment from West Barton. Look at the current version of the LDP. So on the same day that we were there, Simon, they were talking about all of the sites around Thatcham. This was on the 2nd of October. There's a number of sites that are out of settlement boundary. So the site around Bowling Green Road, the 225, the site out to Cold Ash. There was a big discussion about now West Berks are proposing using those sites out of settlement. So they're willing to change the settlement boundary to include those sites because they've been forced into including those sites by the inspector. But here we have a site that should have been within the settlement boundary. They're using the settlement boundary to say no, we wouldn't consider it. And if I talk to all the neighbours around there, they would definitely support residential expansion. So potential route forward. I've only got 2 slides left. Hopefully that will give us a little bit of background on this. Potential route forward is and again with the papers, I think James circulated the .gov site paper, which gives us detail on permission in principle, and this allows either small parcels of land, non-large development, major development criteria is not 10. So anything under 10 homes, there's a process. You make an application for permission in principle and follow guidelines, and when it gets assessed, as it would do as not. However, because this is a larger plot, then according to this guidance, and there's a table that shows what happens with major development would only be given permission in principle if it was registered under stage 2 of the brownfield register. The prerequisite of being in stage 2 is being to part 1 are the same 4 criteria that we talked about. And so I can't understand why it hasn't come to the register, except there's one comment after 3 years of chasing for a response. They've gone to meet the criteria. In terms of we clearly are in that consultation period now for the next 8 weeks for the local draft plan. Really, I'm here today to ask for this committee and a level of support to go, am I going mad? And if I am, do tell me. But what should we be doing? Because it's been ludicrous that common sense hasn't prevailed here. There's a brownfield site that's not being proposed by West Berks. It's derelict, unusable, no answer. And yet they're under pressure for housing. Right? Now, this site could also be a site, really, because it's coming so late to the party. And it could be a hallelujah moment, maybe. But again, I don't know if there is a progress for that. And so my questions are all about what do I do and how to do it? So any help immediately receive.
If I take over here, permission in principle, probably not familiar with it. It is what it says. It's a new category of planning application where effectively all you're applying for is the principle that the site is suitable for housing. It doesn't require any details of the layout of the site or any of those details. It may, I'm not even sure if it needs enough. I think it probably does need a rough number of houses, but not a specification. And that basically earmarks the site for future development and enables it to be counted in the system. But you don't have to give any details about the layout, the size of houses and stuff like that. And the other thing that's very interesting about it is that it has a very rigid timescale for the council to consider it. I think it's 5 weeks, absolute, rather than the 8 weeks. So that's what the permission principle is. If I just go back to where we are on the local plan, I won't go into much detail because that's a subsequent agenda item. But the consultation that has just started is on main modifications, and the inspector will only comment. Will only consider comments relating to modifications of the plan made since the last consultation. One of those modifications is to extend the settlement boundary to include all of the coastal industry. I'm unclear as to why that should be done, but that is the proposal. But it seems to me extends that the site to non-resident at this stage to a non-residential site, a non-residential part of the substantial plot of land, without doing the same for other sites which are adjacent to the existing settlement boundary. I think the Mr. Ndurja pointed out immediately to the east, I can't remember the name of it, the farm, the actual housing is not adjacent to the settlement boundary. Slightly different case there, whereas here you look at it, the plot is immediately adjacent. So I think at this stage, unless people are the members of the committee wish to, it's best not to get into the detailed legalities of the situation. But I think it'd be useful to get feedback from the members about what they think about the principle, and then we can go away and look at depending on what we feel about the principle, about look offline about the method to progress that principle. So, are there any councillors wish to comment? Councillor McCann.
Yeah, without prejudicing any future discussions and plans coming forward, because it will come back to us at some future date. And it's can I just ask you, you said there was some considerable cost of doing an outline planning drawings and stuff like that and reports. Do you have a rough idea? Are you talking like £100,000? 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
One application is nearer the £100,000.
yeah. And because it's, yeah, no, forget about the appeal. You did that later. Assuming you win, let's be positive.
Is
there a time scale where they have to make a decision on the majors? I know there's an 8-week on normal plans. Is there a statutory time frame?
The point is, I need to look at exactly what it is for this size. But the problem is that if you make a full application, then there's all of the negotiations over the details. And in this case, there will be discussions about flood risk drainage. So
Yeah,
the point is that those discussions effectively extend whatever formal timescale there is for a straight process. All of those to be extended almost indefinitely.
if the participant of the application agrees to that extension.
Not because if they were to say that they would to approve it and they would reject it on that basis, then they would.
I know. Okay, I have a suggestion offline, which is why I'm asking the technical question. Yeah.
So my and it took 16.
I completely empathise with you because I get very frustrated with local authorities' inability to conform to statutory timetables. So I think you're doing the right things, but I think you're being too nice. That's my honest opinion.
Thank you.
I think being nice is just to
Yeah.
be stuck up a year or two or three or four or five.
Yeah.
I don't know if the inspector would be interested in putting that on his recommendations or something like that. We have a separate point, I suppose.
The point is that this is not part of the main modifications.
Yeah.
We'll only consider it if representations are made in such a way as they are impacted by something that is within the main modification.
The whole thoughts.
And I say that because the local plan is, the main modification include a substantial extension to the second boundary, one of the considerations might be whether that extension should be consistent in all parts of the boundary.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's just that I think I'm not surprised you're frustrated. You're asking proper questions, you're not getting proper answers, and they're coming back very sketchy, and it's difficult to argue against the jelly.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was all my time. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Councillor David Lunn.
In any way. I see that than Greenland being used to build houses and never been on. So, you know, we'll see why. Nice. Quite simple, I would have thought.
That's a little.
Yes, I mean, I agree. I think priority should always be given to brownfield sites. I mean, they irony won't be very similar size site with some of us close for a long time, and you know, in different circumstances, your site would have made a much more appropriate site potentially. And so I think we really do need to get the timescales and the rules sorted out for schemes such as yours.
Councillor Jayland.
I think really all I would add to that is that I know that there are people who have voiced opinions that they would like to see the site returned to a leisure use. Clearly there isn't an appetite for that generally because you've tried and it's not worked. And so there isn't an appetite for that. And it isn't really showing a potential for any kind of retail or wholesale warehouse. What do West Berks think it's gonna become? Because it seems like the only sensible solution to me.
It's really crazy that in the last 4 years, the whole everybody below them also changed. So not only has the chief executive and the top team changed, but everybody below. So really, there's no continuity, and what the rule books say. Oh, it's a paper exercise. They've not been able to.
Yeah. Thank goodness we're good.
Influencing.
Observation. I think it's very problematic for industrial or large retail use because there is no accessible lorry access from the east. The lorry can't make the turn at the Lorry junction. Town Lane has traffic calming for the purpose of preventing those sort of things apart from buses. Obviously, Thames Water do have large numbers of heavy goods vehicles accessing that, but they presumably, they probably go down Town Lane, annoying the residents, but or they may have to come in from the east. But the access is not. It's certainly for warehousing. I would have thought that would be ruled out on existence. Political.
Yeah, just sort of at the stage. A little bit at the beginning was the history that led up to this, right? Were you in possession of the site when it was a going concern as a bowling alley?
We were operational. We bought it just after 2012, so in 2013. And gone into administration. So they sold for £1 to MFA Bowl. And both of those businesses were the second largest operator in the UK. So they were professional operators, you know, nationwide, sort of 22 to 25 sites. They never invested. They never made it an attractive destination. They just wanted to keep it going as it kind of was. And they went out into administration in 2018, I think. And then a local businessman here, BDZ, they took it on. Bob Ray, you might know him. So they took it on, and they made a success of it, to be fair, until COVID. And then the government grants were so lucrative for them that they were able to take money and then bought it for £1, so they just gave the keys back. So that's what happened there. So, this just went into administration.
And you picked it up at that point.
No, we've had it all the way through all of these.
Oh, okay. We've been leasing it.
Yeah, we have a 25-year lease on it. We just more background. We're not developers. Yes. We have no interest in making money out of whatever was wanted. What we want is for an acceptance that it needs development. There is a shortage of housing, so if it goes to residential development, it's fine. At least we will be able to sell the site. At the moment, it's in limbo. So we can't sell it to anybody because any developer that comes and has a conversation with us, they'll go no. And say no to them.
Yeah.
And it's been the official line. So that's where we are. We're not, we don't have deep enough pockets to put up 100 homes in there, right? So we genuinely thought that 25-year lease would carry on renewing. Part of our retirement plan.
Can I ask a question? No notice on this, I understand if you can't, won't really answer. Would you be interested in a development which was largely housing but had a smaller, for example, leisure use as part of an overall
To
development?
be honest, from my perspective, because I'm not going to do the development, question doesn't sit with me really.
Yeah.
So once somebody bought turns into a mixed use for sure. We had discussions with West Parks. If we did change of use, what would you allow? And that was a question. So you had to give them a closed question, a yes/no question. So what about industrial? It came back as a maybe. What about care? It came back as a no. Kind of, and I'd have thought that was actually a sort of, combination rather than housing maybe. And
I was thinking of a little bit of leisure.
leisure maybe.
For example, as you say that site at the moment is above the scale that it can be sustained in Newbury.
Yes.
Shortages of different types of leisure.
So nobody, we kids, people like something, they felt it wasn't right. It was too big.
Thinking, for example, if you say majority housing, and there's all the leisure is very broad, so I can think of a gym, the site, so that the usage is the class of usages and maintained in part.
One interested party who on the lower working. So they would have had office space for residents in the area. So because everybody's doing this hybrid working, and there might have been a coffee shop and a gym and some workspace. That would have worked alongside residential.
Yeah.
So I advise it as a developer, put in an application. I think where I'd like to be is with your support, find a way of getting it onto the brownfield register. If it gets onto the first stage of brownfield register, it'll automatically go to the second. Going back to your point on applying for permission in principle, having had a look at the planning apps, there is no formal way of making an application. From the guidance notes that they've got, it seems that it would automatically get permission in principle. So I think that is the smoothest way to get it.
Thank you very much. I think as a closing, I don't think this is a matter for a vote. But I get the feeling that the members, at least here, are supportive of the concept of redevelopment. And we'll discuss it further as to both whether this falls within the terms of the current consultation on local plan, and if so, if and how we would want to respond formally within that forum, or if there are other opportunities to raise the matter. So I don't think we can discuss the formalities of how we progress it here, but I get the feeling that at least the councillors present today are supportive of the principle of us supporting you and possibly using our offices to further that. Thank you very much.
We will definitely be making a representation. We will use the change at Colthorpe. Suspected that we really thought that the coal ash areas were also outside of settlement in the hearing. That's what they were.
Yeah, they are, but I think the argument about development land, I think the argument about development land is more closer in policy legal terms than the addition of a new strategic site, which is what's happening at Cold Ash. It's a different degree.
Understand. So if we're able to represent the site, please, council, would be very grateful for your support for that. And then second, and I'm happy to line on how we do that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for listening to me. Cheers. Property will never increase because we have considered applications for the property. We might see you again when we get more detailed proposals. Absolutely. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So we now move on to agenda item 4. The approval of the minutes for the meeting held on the 19th of December. Sorry, 19th of November.
Yeah, just want to make sure there's been no response from council regarding the works in the A4.
Approve the minutes. So I'll propose to approve the minutes. Do I have a second for that? Councillor McCann was quicker on the mark.
My apologies.
Yes.
My apologies.
It's in favour. 2. I think we've.
I know what's coming.
There's been no final response from West Berks regarding the inquiry made about the works on the A4 and the wall that's been removed from this. I'm still waiting for the response.
Wow. They've done everything, the roof's on, some of the facade at the front, everything's gutted. And I believe there's trenches done for the foundation to see how deep they need to go. Forestry trenches. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. But I was more surprised that they got permission to drive across the public footpath. It's the 30-ton lorry. Yeah. It was my surprise. And did we find out whose wall it was? Because they had to have permission from a person who owned.
Yeah, I would assume it was. I believe, having looked at the boundary of the conservation area, the wall is probably owned by the property. But it is probably also within the conservation area.
They don't ask. You do and then say, oh.
Yeah, that's right.
Easier to apologise.
What's the public comment?
So moving on to the 2 planning applications that we have to consider. I will have a brief comment on the one, but not about.
Oh, okay. It's the first one is 76 Burbank Road, Clifton Common. This is new story extension, first floor extension, new driveway, garage, and carport. There is no Google map for this because it's on Burbank Road. But these are the elevations. And this was brought to be considered because it meets the criteria.
Do you have a plan? If you've got a plan where it is, so the point there, if you look at the very left of that. So not there, it's not there, but
it's off of this road down here.
Okay. So there was a drawing with the showing of the last one was just before that. The next one, I believe. There was a not gold
Oh,
for
this was the same one that I think was a different sheet.
next one.
No,
One,
that's just the gear.
that next one. Yeah, you did one where there was,
I think it was the the sheet that you were looking at.
was it, my apologies, sorry, Chair.
Go back to that sheet that you had before.
Bottom of it, that's what you were saying. There was the drawing of it, was second and the
Left
loan
hand corner, wasn't it?
thing, yes.
That's for something.
The only thing I would suggest
Yeah.
with this is that we make sure that there's a covenant that it isn't turned into a one bedroom residential. Because the amount of times I've seen that happen. So I would. I agree if they want a carport, it's down to them sort of stuff, but. And the covenant that there's some sort of protection be. This that isn't converted. Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. So that would be, that would, the covenant is that there would be, it would require planning permission. Notwithstanding permitted development, it would require planning permission.
That would be a condition of accepting. There's otherwise you're.
Yeah. So this is set back from a long way from the road. It looked like it's overlooked. So I think Councillor McCann has already effectively proposed that we make no objections to the inclusion of covenant in the as a condition of being approved. So I'll second that in support of those. Thank you. It's unanimous.
Second one is the Scotland House, Hill, demolition of existing dwelling and erection of replacement dwelling. If as you come past that side, there. Yeah, we've got pictures of the properties. People moving down there. So these are the elevation plans.
Is that next to that big estate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I drove past it today actually in the winter.
This is the site plan of
Yeah.
the proposal. So yes, complete demolition.
Can you go back to the Google view one? Yeah, the Google. So that is the only property, isn't it? Between Pinchington, is it what's it called, Wellingtonia Drive, and the top of Crookham Hill. I recall that has been subject to a number of applications for extension that presumably have been refused, given that they've now proposed a demolish and a rebuild.
Is the
But if you can you go back to the is the West Berkshire Council website working at the moment?
no,
Okay.
it doesn't seem to want to work.
So it's the bit that I was interested in. If you go back to the bit before that, that's showing the documents. Can you get back to the site that's the page before, which has got that West Berkshire, the documents. That comes from a link from something else from another page on the planning portal. So you've got the page open. Here, search results. Click on them. So no, down we've received. There's a link to search results. Can you see what goes back to that? And we see that, okay. I think my gut feel is that is I said that there've been a number of applications for extensions to that site.
So you're looking for previous application
Yes.
history.
But see what happens.
Any reason they wanted to demolish what's currently there?
Well, I suspect that's why I'm interested as to why there are because I recall seeing a number of planning applications for extensions. If those were, I'm assuming that if they'd been granted, likely would have been approved. So if you click on that, and then there should be other.
That's storage systems.
We'll scroll down related cases. So if you click on that properties and see what happens there.
This is particularly user-friendly website, this one, isn't it?
Okay.
You should get used to it.
Perhaps I'm mistaken, I'm very different address, but there are maybe two properties here close together there. Anyway, we've got demolish and rebuild. This to Pinchington Hall, it's probably on the boundary of Pinchington Hall, but that new road called Wellingtonia Drive is incredibly close to Pinchington Hall, as we recall from a licensing decision. So they've got to remember the licensing decision involving nuisance from Pinchington Hall to that estate. So obviously is already very overlooked or adjacent to that development. So do we have any comments on principle? Of course, this is development outside of the settlement boundary. It is replacement of one property with one property.
Yeah.
McCann, you?
I think it's, yeah, I wouldn't, yeah.
I take it you're proposing no objection.
I have no objection to the highways department agreeing that entrances and exits are appropriate.
Sometimes that.
Quite of the economy. So I think Councillor David Lunn was probably nodding effectively as seconder for that. No objections, so that's no objection. I was going to comment on 6 Roger Cross Drive because that's a road I know quite well. Surprised any of the properties there actually have any space for an outbuilding. So given that it's outside of our criteria, I don't think we're assuming that they can fit it in. We don't have a reason to comment. Though I assume there was no objection from neighbours, so that would be the main reason to be concerned. Okay, so thank you for that. We'll move on to agenda item 6.
Decision notices this month are presented on the screen there. Got one from Agricola Way, which was discussed previous meeting, and for approvals.
Okay. Thank you. So, moving on to agenda item 7.
7, West Berks have now confirmed that Thatcham Town Council has been awarded a grant of £47,604.37 for 6 new bus shelters as part of the shelter improvement scheme. The locations are on the screen. The recommendations from have been included. The Encore Garden Centre. Found the shelter along with these locations, and West Berks have also confirmed that the grant will include contribution for 5 years of maintenance cleaning, and 4 of the shelters will have grass roofs. First in town.
Yeah, who knows them?
Who's going to get out?
Locations. But we did talk.
It was just a few months ago, can I see?
There were a few other suggestions which proved to be impractical due to the width of the.
So Sparks and
agreed.
and those were the 6.
Yeah. It's just that you put bus stop in the wrong bus shelter in the wrong place. And everybody's the road they want it at.
Garden Centre Pound Lane North side is because there's already one on the south.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for explaining.
On the other one.
Okay, Bill, happy, do we need to No, we're noting.
That's just no.
Well, it says consider potential location, so we.
Yeah, that
We
was,
just note that and
That was-
and endorse those locations.
So in order to clarify this point of advice, we get the grant, who does the work and who does the installation? Do we get contractors in or do we just stay with Berkshire?
Externature who are. Essentially, they will send us, we will then liaise with contractor to install. Management costs and everything included.
All sorted and the time frame from receiving the grant to digging holes.
Got to be. Not by March,
This is what we're talking to me about.
and then this is a nice.
Another one, okay, all right.
So, yeah, I would imagine
Okay,
pretty soon in the year there will be.
that's fantastic. Oh, well, good news.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So Thatcham Neighbourhood Development Plan, certainly some of you were at the launch meeting, which was successful last week. The council has agreed to start the process of the neighbourhood development plan. We have been designated as an area by West Berkshire Council. We had the launch meeting to invite members of the public to participate. And we've agreed the terms of reference. And we now need to seek volunteers to participate in the steering group.
Emails have had some responses already.
And then the council will decide who affects the initial process. Initial one is that they're appointed, but from volunteers from the community for at least some of those chairs. And they will be, the steering group will be comprised of the chairs of the working groups. So,
And the steering group is approved here.
the membership will be, yes, it will be finally approved for the steering group. No, it'll be approved by, I think, by full council.
I was wondering because it was there,
Full council.
Full council will
but we forward.
the working party to privately consider the names, so we don't have a public discussion of people who put their names forward until we put them as people that we've chosen put forward with people. We don't have public discussion of the people.
Process.
Yeah. So that's in progress, and I would expect the activities to get underway for the full steam somewhere in first quarter next year. And we're aiming to do it quickly rather than drawn out. Yes, Councillor Lilly, yeah.
We enjoyed it, so we had a response from members of the public who were here, whether they're interested in groups.
Yes, the email went out to start with. We've had about 4 or 5 come back.
Oh, good.
That's it so far.
So that was, of course, so we're inviting people to put their names forward for the steering group. The terms of reference make the working groups open. So if people can express interest now, but that we're not selecting a closed membership, which we have to set in stone. So people can participate. I would expect that the meetings will be structured such there'll be particular topics at particular meetings, so people don't have to turn up to every one in order to discuss a particular set of topics that they're interested in. And I will follow up with the press about the details. Great. So
Lucky you.
plan review. So we didn't have any West Berkshire councillors here. West Berkshire Council approved that the local plan the main modification should proceed to consultation. That happened on Thursday of the week, I think. Anticipating that would happen, I prepared a summary document. So there are 10 documents, of which the 2 that are most important to us are the schedule of main modifications, which is 165 pages, and the updated environmental assessment, something that's EA/SEA is 965 pages long. So what I've done so far, and it's part of the agenda for this meeting, is to extract the parts of that, of the main modifications that are relevant to Thatcham. And relevant and significant to Thatcham. So this document has, firstly, it is only the 41 pages that I thought were most relevant. And within that, I've highlighted the paragraphs and I think in fact, if you go through that document and look at the highlighted text, that would be what I think we will be needing to consider. They since published the format of the consultation, which is only paper-based, or should I say document-based. There will be no online form for members of the public to respond to this consultation. Which in some ways is a good thing, because the schedule of main modifications describes what the changes are. The document explains, it gives a background as to why the changes are made and what the impact of the changes would be on aspects of the community and the area. So the response document comments on both at the same time. To address both aspects, because I suspect that most people will be more interested in practice on the impact than the words of the document itself. But it does create quite a threshold of people to respond at all. I should say, by the way, that if people at this stage, the inspector is asking for grounds for changing modifying for changing the proposals being made, not for of disagreement or objection. You have to provide the grounds in certain particular categories. And that is explained in the form, but it's still quite a difficult thing to do. It's an 8-way consultation from last Friday, which means that the deadline is after our next meeting, but before the meeting after that. Therefore, I am hoping, well, I must meet this meeting for approval that we do, the principle that we do submit once, assuming it will be agreed. And then I will go away and provide a draft response for the next meeting, Planning and Highways, and we'll obviously be discussing with individual people what we want to say in various aspects of that response before, so we don't get a massive document at the next meeting. That also, by the way, means that because the deadline is January and we're meeting fairly early in January, that our response document will be available for the public several weeks after we agree it. And therefore, if they want to, it will provide help with them in making their responses, because they will see a sort of an example of how to address various concerns in the right language. And there is, by the way, the contingency that if we find that further work is needed, the meeting of full council is before the deadline. So if we found we needed further work, the Planning Highways could refer the matter to full council for final approval. So at that, we've got the summary of main modifications there. We're sufficiently familiar with the background to already know about the issues about health centres and stuff, which will be the issues in the ENA document. And I'll try to produce a summary of that, because I need it for myself anyway. And wasn't possible before this meeting, but also so any questions before we proceed? So I would going to therefore propose that from the chair, the Planning and Highway Committee does respond to the consultation and gives them the task of preparing the response for consideration at the next meeting. Perhaps. Given the second half of that point, I think I saw the hands very quickly. Those in favour, Councillor Lunn, I think was first. Those in favour, again, I can explain background to the members of the press. Fine. So that covers, I think, the matters for the local plan review. That is likely to be the very last that we see of it. Before it goes to the inspector, for comments that we're submitting, by the way, go to the inspector. And he then has to consider whether the main modifications that have been proposed, formally speaking by the council, though basically under the instructions of the inspector, need to be modified before the plan is submitted to the Secretary of State for final approval. It is possible that there might be but given this, it's been situated as that as possible, but we'll cross the bridge if it comes to it. So then moving on to planning matters.
Nothing today. Okay.
Traffic management, highways and road safety matters.
Just one to note, there's been a traffic raid order from West Berkshire Council, Francis Bailey School, especially the surrounding roads of Edwin Close, Jedburgh Close and Stillman Drive. There's been some parking issues, even parking.
So you can just scroll because it actually might be what it seems. So this, I think, is the conversion into this. Last year there was an experimental traffic. This is the conversion of order into a permanent traffic regulation.
Oh,
I would assume. Okay. Francis Bailey School, restrict hours, yeah.
15 till 9.
Yeah, so that was basically what the the reason it's experimental is that they don't have to consult before they bring it into force, and then they consult during the experimental period, and they've obviously done. So this was really permanent.
and we only note that, we don't. Some residents have their noses well put out of joint. The process more than anything.
But they would have had the opportunity to comment on the experimental thing, and they would have been notified.
That's it.
Thank you very much. So with that, we come to the end of the agenda, and I therefore close the meeting. Thank you very much.